you like to have a friend? Wouldn't you like to be known as a friend? But more importantly, would you like to be known as a friend of God? So, what does being a friend actually entail? One dictionary defines a friend as someone you know well, an intimate associate, a person on the same side in a struggle, or a supporter. So then, how can we be called God's friend? We have a prime example set before us in the Bible at James chapter 2, verse 23. It refers to Abraham as being God's friend. Let's look at 3 qualities of Abraham that made him worthy of being called God's friend. The first being his obedience. Let's read together Genesis chapter 13, verses 14, 15, and 17. So Genesis chapter 13, verses 14, 15, and 17 says, Jehovah said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Raise your eyes, please, and look from the place where you are, to the north and the south, east and west. Because all the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring as a lasting possession." And 17, "Get up, travel through the length and the breadth of the land, for to you I'm going to give it." So Abraham could have said, "Why do I have to leave and live like a nomad? I trust you, I believe you." But instead, he did what he was told without hesitation or without question. So as young ones today, we can learn from this. When our parents tell us to do something, we should be able to act upon that immediately without hesitation or without question. The second quality of Abraham that endeared him to Jehovah was his courage. In Genesis chapter 14, we see that 4 allied kings went up against 5 other kingdoms and won. So amongst all of that, Abraham's nephew Lot was captured. So then, going up against these 4 powerful kings, Abraham courageously gathered 318 of his trained men. So step back for a second and just imagine a tent dweller going up against 4 nations that had just defeated 5 other kingdoms. It almost seems impossible, if not foolish, right? Well, Abraham had no doubt in his heart that Jehovah would fight for them. And even though I'm not in school now, I still remember what it was like to face peer pressure. Some days it would feel impossible to resist. It takes great courage and faith in Jehovah to get through most hardships. So Jehovah needs to be that real to us that we can rely on him as he was with Abraham. A third quality that made it possible for Abraham to be God's friend would be his unselfishness. So can you imagine giving 1/10 of everything you own to someone? We can sometimes find it hard to share what we have with someone. So can you imagine giving 10% of everything to someone? Well, that's what Abraham did. Notice with me verses 18 through 20 of chapter 14 of Genesis. That's Genesis chapter 14, verses 18 through 20. And it says, "And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of the Most High God. Then he blessed him and said, 'Blessed be Abram, the Most High God, maker of heaven and earth, and praised be the Most High God, who has handed your oppressors over to you.' And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything." So this is not saying that we should give 1/10 of everything we have to Jehovah. The point is Abraham's unselfishness. We can ask ourselves, do I give unselfishly of my time, my energy, and even what money I have to Jehovah? So may we remember that a friend of Jehovah is one who displays courage, obedience, and unselfishness.
Thank you, Brother Paulson. Enjoyed that very, very much. Well developed. Your audience contact was good. Your gestures were good. I like the illustration of the 10%. You brought it home. How would you feel if you had to give up 10% of everything? Most of us probably squirmed in our seat. we wouldn't be too excited about the thought. Most of us couldn't find 10% of what we own, much less give it away, because our lives are so complicated. I thought you did very well. On the guidebook on page 127 talks about audience contact. And it said we should look slowly, not rhythmically, it's not like this, but around the room and maybe say a sentence to a person and look at somebody else and say a sentence. Doesn't mean your young brother get to look at all the pretty sisters and say a sentence or two to them. But look at the people of all age groups, some in the back, some in the front, and see how they're reacting. Because you can tell by their facial expressions, just like they can tell from ours, how they're responding to the material. I thought you did very well. See me after the meeting.